Most people think investing is all about picking the right stock, finding the next Apple, or trying to somehow time the market before everyone else catches on. But old money? They know that mentality is exactly why average investors fail. Their approach is completely different. It relies on sticking to century-old rules and mathematical engines that prioritize multi-generational stewardship over those quick, flashy wins.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll be covering the great misconception, the sacred principle, finite assets, arbitrage, jurisdictions, and finally, the engine of time. Make sure you stick around for that last one because it's the true mathematical engine behind every multi-generational fortune.
Okay, Section 1, the great misconception, why average investors fail.
Moving right along to Section 2, the sacred principle, rule number 1.
So the absolute foundation of old money investing is remarkably simple. Never, ever sell the principal. The original capital is completely sacred. If you have a $10 million principal, kind of like many Rockefeller trusts, the rule is you can spend what it produces, but you can never ever touch the core machine itself. In the Rockefeller family trust structure, descendants get income from dividends, interest, and distributions, sure, but the principal, that stays invested, compounding across generations, basically forever. Let's put that math into perspective. A $10 million principal at an average 7% return generates $700,000 annually for things like education, healthcare, and philanthropy, and that's without touching a single dollar of the original capital. It's ready to generate another $700,000 the very next year. But look at what happens if you spend just a little too much. If you spend 10% instead of just the yield, the math reverses completely. It literally destroys the entire fortune within 2 generations. You just cannot spend the machine itself.
And this brings us to a really profound psychological shift. Old money families don't view themselves as owners of wealth. Not at all. They see themselves simply as its temporary managers for the next generation. The money fundamentally belongs to the people coming after you.
All right, Section 3, finite asset accumulation. Rule number 2.
Here's the deal. If human effort can create it, human effort can destroy its value. A competitor can always come along and build a better product, which is exactly why families who think in centuries heavily weigh their portfolios with specific assets that have permanently fixed supplies. We're talking things with zero replication risk. Think about it. A masterpiece by a deceased artist, like a Vermeer or a Rothko, just cannot be reproduced. A first edition, historically significant book is entirely unique. Water rights and mineral deposits, those are finite.
Contrast that with a tech company. That can easily be disrupted tomorrow. Patents expire, new competitors emerge out of nowhere. But 100 acres of farmland 30 minutes from a growing city? Well, like the 300 acres in central London owned by the Grosvenor family, that will never go out of style. The Rothschild family has been doing this by acquiring prime European real estate since the 1760s. It's not some trendy quarterly investment strategy. It is a permanent feature of their financial architecture. Because if the supply is permanently fixed, it's pretty much guaranteed to appreciate as the population grows.
Section 4, arbitrage versus speculation. Rule number 3.
Now, rule number 3 is arguably the most misunderstood out of all of them. Use leverage, but never for speculation. When families like the Rockefellers want to buy something new, they don't sell an existing asset to fund it. Actually, scratch that. They don't sell at all. Instead, they utilize arbitrage. They borrow against their existing assets at a super low interest rate to buy more assets. By collateralizing debt against what they already own, absolutely no capital gains taxes are triggered, and their existing assets just keep right on appreciating.
Let's break down the exact math behind this strategy. Imagine a $100 million stock portfolio. Taking out a $70 million loan at a borrowing rate of 3.5% to buy new assets that yield 7%, that is pure profit on the spread. And importantly, it is not speculation because the debt isn't funding a lavish lifestyle. A loan used to buy a sports car is a liability. But a loan used to buy an apartment building that literally pays the loan back through rents, that's an asset. They borrow to acquire more income-producing assets, never just to consume.
Moving on to Section 5, jurisdictional survival. Rule number 4.
Old money distributes wealth across various legal jurisdictions, places like Switzerland, Singapore, the Cayman Islands, Delaware, and Liechtenstein. Now, they don't do this to illegally evade taxes. Now, they do it to ensure that a single government, legal system, or currency crisis cannot possibly reach the entire fortune. For example, when Argentina defaulted on its debt back in 2001, families with all their assets tied up in Argentine pesos were completely wiped out. But families with assets distributed across multiple jurisdictions, they experienced only a single-digit loss.
You see, this isn't paranoia. It's just the cold, hard mathematics of survival. If you have a 1% chance of losing everything in a given generation, your 10-generation survival rate is only about 90%. The cost of being wrong is just way too high. But by reducing your catastrophic risk to just 0.1% through jurisdictional diversification, you push your survival rate to over 99%. No single bank or trustee holds everything, which ensures no single crisis can touch the entire estate.
And finally, Section 6, the engine of time. Rule number 5.
The boring but utterly unstoppable engine behind everything we've discussed today is compound interest. Einstein himself allegedly called it the eighth wonder of the world. But as we'll see in the data, he might have actually been understating its power over these long time frames. Just consider a single dollar invested in the S&P 500 back in 1926. By 2026, 100 years later, that single dollar with reinvested dividends is worth approximately $14,700.
Now let's look at how the Rockefeller fortune actually operates on this kind of timeline. A $10 million principal, which is not unusual for a family wealthy for several generations, left completely untouched, at a 7% return after inflation, becomes nearly $867 million in a century, and it absolutely explodes to over $75 billion after 200 years. To put that in perspective, John D. Rockefeller's original Standard Oil wealth was about $1 billion in today's terms. Today, through 144 years of compounding, the family's wealth is in the tens of billions, and that's despite massive charitable giving, inheritance taxes, world wars, and market crashes. The engine isn't genius investing. The engine is time, multiplied by the absolute refusal to touch the principal. So why doesn't everyone do this? Well, the reason almost nobody achieves this is simply a matter of the time horizon. Most people are only investing for a 30 to 40-year retirement, but old money families, they are actively investing for people who haven't even been born yet. That massive shift from thinking in decades to thinking in centuries is worth more than any stock-picking skill on the planet. It is the literal difference between a comfortable retirement and a financial legacy that shapes history.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought. The gap between how most people invest and how old money invests isn't about insider information or elite access. It's really just about these 5 rules. They don't require $1 billion to start. They just require a completely different way of thinking. Shifting your mindset from a spender to a steward is without a doubt the single most undervalued investing strategy in the world. So, looking at your own financial choices right now,